All right. We have an elderling boy. Best I can give you is some silverware.
Best I can give you is really nice handcrafted Rain Wild furniture.
Yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And we're discussing chapter 39 this week, Bingtown. We're 3 chapters away, technically. Yeah. This one, 40, and then the epilogue.
Yeah.
And this one is pretty short. We're getting down to the end, so they're kind of ticking away. Not much to catch up on. We've already had the climax of the book.
Yeah.
We're already catching up on the trade agreements and how things are going from the Jamaillian side.
I feel like when you're reading this book all together, it's kind of a big whiplash of like, oh yeah, there was stuff happening in Bingtown. Because when we left Bingtown, it was like important and felt really important to know what was going to happen next and what's going on.
Right.
But then you get so caught up in like the whole searching for Malta surviving pirate storyline that you almost forget. Obviously you don't forget, but it doesn't feel as important anymore.
And I always feel like the Paragon kind of comes out of nowhere in the end. Because like in the beginning, in the middle of this book is very important. There's a scene where it almost burns down or whatever. And then they go to the island and then disappear for like a couple chapters. And it's all about, Malta getting there and negotiations. And all of a sudden we join back up with them. So all of those kind of are coming together. And then all of a sudden, here we are in little old Bingtown with Keffria and Ronica.
Yeah. Yeah.
So chapter by chapter, like week by week, these chapters suffer a little bit just because it feels like there's nothing there.
Yeah. And there is. And obviously when you're reading it all together, you're like, oh yeah, and you can get right back into it. It doesn't feel as bad, but definitely if you're only reading, which I don't know why we made this podcast as like a weekly chapter episode. And in my head, when we started, I thought there would be people that just read the chapter ahead of the week, like an assignment or something. And I really actually, as we go on, I'm like, that's not really realistic because I don't think anybody's doing that. But
I mean, why would they? I mean, some people do. They've written in that they like doing it chapter by chapter, but also why? To you, like listeners out there, do you read ahead and then just keep following along with us sometimes? Because why would you spend, this is going to be 15 years to read 16 books?
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like some people who have written and have said that they read the chapter to refresh for the episode.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
But they reread the books over and over again anyway. So that's that. Yeah.
Why would you do what we're doing to ourselves, to yourself?
Oh.
But either way, we're catching up in Bingtown.
Yes.
It's been that month gap or 3-week gap that we saw in Jamaillia with Malta's point of view. She mentioned that there's been multiple galas. And now we're jumping over to the Bingtown side of things after that even.
Yes.
Because they're getting some mail.
Yes. And it could be around the same time.
It could be, yes.
Because they're using birds. And so that's faster than ship mail.
Yeah. And the decision would have been made before the gala.
Yes. And I feel like, it is still a long time since we've been with Ronica and Keffria. When we left off, they were talking to Janie Kupris about they did not trade Selden, but they were trading Selden for furniture.
Right. That is so long ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last time we saw them. They were trading Selden for furniture.
Yeah, obviously very simplified. It is not what happened, but so that's when we last saw them.
It's like the Pawn Stars,
Yeah, Selden is worth.
All right, we have an elderling boy. Best I can give you is some silverware.
Best I can give you is really nice handcrafted Rain Wild furniture.
Yeah. Hey, furniture's expensive.
It is. One rug? Ooh.
True.
I'd think about it. But anyway, that's when we last saw them. So they were sort of trying to get their life back together and sort of figure out what life was like in this new Bingtown that was being rebuilt. Mm-hmm. And now we are with Ronica and, with Keffria, I guess. We're starting Keffria's point of view. After some time has passed, because they have some furniture, not everything they need yet, it seems, but they do have some furniture. And so things have progressed in Bingtown as well.
Yeah, so Keffria's point of view, Ronica walks in and says that Companion Serilla is in the parlor. And Keffria's like, are you certain? And immediately knows that's a foolish question to ask and is looking around at the room because she's like, oh, we have to entertain somebody who, you know, is used to Jamaillian Palace. Like, they're still old traders, right? They're still trying to put on the best face on everything. So she's looking around at all the decorations that they have in this particular room.
Which is her room, her old room with Kyle.
Yes. And there's old draperies from Selden's room, dyed, turned, and pressed, still looked like the old draperies from Selden's room. And no matter what she did to her bedchamber, it would still be the room she had shared with Kyle. Janie Coopers had sent Rainwild furniture to her, but the lovely stuff was airy and pale, like the ghosts of the heavy bedstead and massive chest that had once filled the room. She wondered if she should move into Malta's room and keep this larger chamber for when Rain and Malta visited. But perhaps that would be cruel. Would not this room remind Malta of her father as much as it reminded Keffria of her husband? And then she thinks of Kyle, but that's a good place to stop for the room reflection, at least.
Yes. Yeah. So there is that struggle in, even though they have rebuilt and they do have new things, brand new furniture, it's not the same. It doesn't erase what has happened. And it is sort of, especially with this pale furniture, the ghost of what was. And I think that is something that's really real. And I like that Hobb has put this in, that it wasn't just, oh, we got new furniture, yay. It's
right.
like, I mean, yeah, there's new furniture, but it's still my room.
Yeah.
It's still, yeah, and it's different. And I don't know. I think that's really well done here.
Yeah, so now we see kind of the result of Althea's lies to her family.
Yes, what Althea ended up going with.
Right. So Kyle died on the decks of the Paragon battling Jamaillian sailors. For what matter of a day later, they were the allies, right? So Keffria is finally put at ease for Kyle's rest, can put his memory to rest, because she was in her head kind of debating, like, is he my husband still? Like, are we a partnership? I have my newfound independence. And now she can finally kind of put that aside and be like, it's tragic that he had to die, but I'm moving on with my life.
And she also touches on the fact that Althea is uncharacteristically, what did she say? Uncharacteristically sensitive when she did it, like,
and brought the news.
The news, and how she couldn't even make herself cry at it. And I think it's really interesting to have this, and especially since we're presumably weeks away from when she got the news, because it really shows us sort of a step back look at how she was feeling and how she's processing those feelings of losing her husband when she was in the process of figuring out that maybe her husband wasn't even the guy she thought he was.
Right.
And now she never gets to face that. She never gets to see how she would do as this new Keffria against Kyle, and how that would work, and if there was a chance for them to reconcile. Because there is a world in which he comes home and is able to, love Keffria anyway and make it work. I don't know that it's super realistic,
but
it
would require a lot of professional help.
Yeah. No, I think Kyle does love Keffria. We've talked about how he is a family guy. He wants to do things for the family. I think he would have a hard time being told what to do by a woman.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He would have a hard time adjusting after his very traumatic captivity.
Also that, taking that into consideration too, yeah.
Yeah, Keffria is able to kind of put that aside and not have to deal with that, and be able to just keep the good memories in her head,
right,
and move on, which is what Althea kind of does for the family.
Right. And she talks about how thankfully her mother stays quiet, so Ronica doesn't say anything about the death of Kyle. And
just bowing her head.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of sad. I think Keffria's relationship with her family is really sad when you look at it, because at the end of the day, her little sister had to deliver the news of her husband's death, and she's like, wow, she's being uncharacteristically sensitive, and thank goodness my mother didn't say anything. When honestly, as a reader, it doesn't feel that out of character for either of them to be respectful in this moment.
Right. But that's Keffria's kind of relationship with them.
Yeah, she just can't imagine them acting appropriate.
Well, and they have, you know, at every turn kind of spoken out against her husband, right?
Right.
I mean, for good reason from the reader's point of view. But on Keffria's point of view, like her family is completely against her union with her husband of, I don't know, 15 years at least.
Yeah.
So
probably a little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, probably more than that.
But yeah,
17 years.
Yeah. But it's hard too because, I mean, if you think about it, like Althea was a kid when they got married and kind of a bratty teen when she was being most vocal about hating Kyle. And it's not that surprising that 19 or 20-year-old Althea can gain some decorum.
Bratty teen a year ago.
Not real. I mean, she at least had some decorum when talking about taking back her ship from Kyle. You know what I mean?
A little bit, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's definitely some old wounds at play that are making Keffria feel this way.
Ronica kind of startles her out of her reverie, though, and says that Companion Serilla does not wait well. And so Keffria is kind of wondering out loud whatever could bring her here and so early in the day. And then Ronica says she has a message for us. Now she saw the anxiety in her mother's eyes. Rain, Malta, and Wintro were in Jamaillia. This was as likely to be bad news as good. Her stomach tightened inside her. I suppose the only way to hear it is to speak with her. And so they hurry down to the parlor with Ronica following a little bit more slowly. And we learn that kind of spring has brought a lessening of weather to Bingtown, which has been very nice.
Right. And I also just want to point out that this is a huge change in characters from the very beginning, because here we have Keffria calling the shots. She's taking the lead. She's calming her mother down. She's saying, well, we have to go see what
her
it is about.
Her mother grabbing her for the message and not just taking it immediately.
Exactly. And then following behind Keffria. Like a lot has changed in this. And as frustrating as it is to see that their relationships haven't gotten too much better. It has. They
have quite a bit, I think.
But I feel like there's more growth in the people themselves and the relationships. I mean, I guess the relationships too, but just how they think of each other hasn't really changed all that much, even though they are making big changes. So that's just interesting. It is very, I think, true to family sometimes, though.
Keffria also remarks that the stalls in the market had reopened and people laughed and talked as they traded again. So business has returned to Bingtown and it is starting to thrive once more. Spring alone could not solve all of Bingtown's problems, though. Softer weather had speeded the departure of many of the disgruntled new traders, and with the Pirate Isles' increased patrols against the Chalcedean ships and the absence of serpents, travel would normalize swiftly. New wharves and piers were nearly completed. 6 duchies' ships, anxious to court this new market, were braving the dangers of the Chalcedean coast to bring trade goods south to Bingtown. As trade revived, so did the town. So yeah, we're learning that Bingtown is kind of thriving once more, and that's kind of like out of the way now. It's just like, hey, Bingtown's doing good, trade reopened, 6 duchies is coming, all these new markets are opening, we're good. Let's move on to the more personal problems.
Exactly.
And now we're kind of focused, Keffria's more focused on the manor itself, kind of looking at the gardens and the atrium, that because they have that indoor garden.
Yeah.
And the bulbs are starting to sprout there. So we kind of get this symbolic new life is sprouting in.
Even though it looks like death, it has not won.
Exactly. In the Vestrit Manor, it's sprouting as well, not just Bingtown. Life reasserted itself. And it brought a welcome change in diet as well. There were fresh greens and scallions. Something besides fish, basically, which is funny.
Yes. And they have some chickens and they have eggs now. And they also have a few eggs that got missed. And so there's a promise of new chicks to come soon as well, which is exciting. More chickens, you know.
Yeah.
That chicken life. Love little bits of Robin Hobb in there because I feel like she owns chickens. If anybody doesn't follow her Instagram, please do. She has such cute life content, farm life content. But Yeah, definitely some changes in the air. Spring is in the air. Spring has sprung.
So we enter the parlor, and Serilla is sitting patiently in the parlor. She's staring at nothing, her back to the brightness of the undraped window. She was sedately dressed, more warmly than the day warranted, as if Bingtown's spring were her autumn. At the sound of Keffria's footsteps, she turned her head slowly. She came to her feet as Keffria entered the room. Trader Vestrit, she greeted her in a subdued tone. Without waiting for Keffria's greeting, she extended her tiny coil of paper.
I do just want to quickly point out that it's pretty big that Serilla is facing with her back to the open window, because the last time we really got to be with Keffria with Serilla, was when she was still in the height of her paranoia of somebody was coming to kill her too.
Right.
And she wouldn't even go near the windows.
That's true.
And
That's
so
true.
Clearly a lot has changed. And
She's feeling a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, she's done some healing as well, because she's able to, sit with her back to a window.
So Keffria kind of greets her, says, "Thank you. This is an unprecedented honor that you bring us the message yourself." Serilla smiled stiffly but said no more, so Robin Hobb's kind of setting us up for some bad news here. But Keffria takes the paper, crosses to the window, and notes that of necessity the messages were brief and tightly written because, they're carried by bird. So reads it, passes it on to Ronica as she deciphered it. "Ophelia has arrived safely. Letters delivered. All are well. Vivacia to sail soon." She looked up at her mother with a smile. "Just our personal concerns here. How kind of Greg to arrange to let us know." "The official tidings concern you as well," Serilla informed her. "Please read them." So if you guys can remember to the Rainwild Chronicles, so looking ahead in our podcast, the Detozi and Eric, Keeper of the Birds exchanges, they always have an official request at the top, and then like in italics below is their personal messages.
Yes.
So I think this is what they're referring to here. Is Keffria immediately just goes to the personal messages of like, obviously it would just be in the personal.
Right.
So now Cirilla's like, no. Read the whole thing.
Yeah, actually read it, please. Which, to be fair, as a nosy person,
you would have.
I would have read the whole thing to begin with, but I guess Keffria is better than me, because she was like, oh, clearly I want to be part of the official tidings.
Right. So Keffria has to reread it multiple times because it is very surprising to her. And she reads out, "Companion Serilla is dismissed from the satrap's service. He has no further need of her here since Bingtown has been recognized as an independent city-state. The satrap also specifically retracts any authority she has claimed for herself. The language is quite harsh." So obviously Ronica and Keffria are awkward because they're right in front of we're just reading something that is
about
very
the person
disparaging.
in front of us. Yeah.
Exactly. And Ronica says, "I do not see how the official tidings concern the Vestrit family." And now Keffria speaks up to the rest of the message and says, "Apparently, Malta had negotiated with the satrap. The Vestrit family will represent the interests of the satrapy in Jamaillia. The annual fee for this service is substantial, 10 satrapies a month. The sum was princely. A humble household could be managed quite well on one." Which, that's crazy, actually.
Yeah, good job, Malta. And she deserves it. So honestly, she should ask for 15.
Heartbeat of silence. And then Keffria shakes her head and says, "I can't accept this, however generous. I have been suggested for the head of the Bingtown Council. It is hard enough to trade honestly for the Vestrit family and still be even-handed in all Bingtown concerns." So, okay. Crazy. Once again, this kind of comes back around to something that I was talking about a few episodes, probably almost 5 to 10 episodes ago now, is how much stuff is going the Vestrit family way.
Yeah.
Everything is in the Vestrit family hands. We have Keffria being possibly the head of the Bingtown Council. She is the head trader for the Vestrit family. She is also the representative of the Rainwilds in Bingtown, officially. And now she's going to be possibly, officially,
Yeah.
the Vestrit family is representatives of the satrapy in Bingtown
As well.
well. And then Malta and Rain are
the embassy of the Rainwilds.
They're the Elderling envoys.
Yes.
They have like
they speak for the dragons.
the direct ear of the dragon. Yeah. So they're extreme powerful. They're named king and queen later on. And then Selden is the bard for the dragon. Is the one kind of directing everything in the Rainwilds for all these little dragon guys. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's all, and then of course Althea has Paragon as well.
Right. Well, Brashen has Paragon, Althea has Brashen.
Yeah. But still, like, there's so much in the Vestrit hands.
Yeah. And I mean, especially when we think about where they started, where they were losing everything for standing on principle, and just they were looking to be destitute next generation, and now the world is their oyster.
Look, I get main characters, they get good things coming to them most of the time. It's kind of odd in Hobb books sometimes, but like there's always like usually a just reward, and good and bad.
Yeah.
But in this society, that doesn't make sense to me. All of these things in one family. This is especially the new Bingtown.
Yeah.
They are like hey, we're all in this together. We're going to elect our people.
Well,
why would they have, I mean, they chose or nominated Keffria to lead it, right?
Right.
But like, there's got to be some bad sentiments against the Vestrits. And I wish we would have seen that with Alice before she leaves Bingtown in the Rainwild Chronicles.
That would be
like,
interesting.
There's too much power consolidated in one family.
Yeah. Somebody quick marry Selden or something.
Like,
yeah. Like,
just do something to kind of spread it out a bit. Or like, I wish there was a little bit more, because it feels a little bit too tidy for me.
That's fair.
But that's just a minor complaint as we wrap up this book. So anyways, they are nominated to be or appointed as the representatives for the satrapy.
And Keffria simply cannot. And she asks Ronica if she could take over. And Ronica says, no way. I have too much of my own thing going on.
I'm not a young woman. I have all the smaller properties. Past few years have been hard on her, she says.
Right. And she says,
the money sounds wonderful, but
yeah, but what's the sense of devoting myself to another's interests to earn money that must immediately be spent to rectify my neglect of our own properties?
Right. And then goes on saying that Selden is too young and much too preoccupied. Malta will be a wedded woman. And besides, the dragon has already claimed her services, and Wintro has carved his own niche in the world. Althea, Keffria suggests. And
oh, please, her mother sighs.
If she cannot do it from the deck of the Paragon, it won't get done. She has not even found the time away from the ship to be properly married. Trell's family is the problem. Keffria defended her sister. Brashen insisted he would claim her hand in the concourse, but they disputed his right. Disowned, he is not a traitor anymore, or so they assert. It is his father, I think, given time that his mother could bring him around. Young Serwyn was certainly willing enough to welcome him back to the family and fold. There's gossip he is seeing a tattooed girl, much to his parents' dismay. So there's a little bit more there, but we have, before we finish up with that little gossip, I just want to comment on Keffria defending Althea.
Yeah.
With her decisions and defending
her not being married.
Union. Yeah.
Yeah. The union and not being married, and saying, well, it's not really her fault. It's the Trell's fault.
Some more growth there.
Yes. And interesting to note that they have been back and they're not married. And it is because his father is still standing by the fact that he's disowned, which is kind of crazy that would have any sway, considering he does own a live ship anyway. You would think that would be another, like, the rest of the council could say, okay, well, he can be his own Trell family.
Right.
Like, you know, I don't know. It just, but you know how they are. They got to stay out of each other's business, even though they all know each other's business. But Keffria does mention that she thinks that his father may come around if Brashen has enough.
If his pride can let him try again.
If his pride will let him try again. So that's a big ask, though. It would be pretty tough to be that successful in something and then still be told you're not good enough. So
Right.
I do feel bad for Brashen.
It is funny that Serwyn is seeing a tattooed girl, though, because I can
Yes.
totally see Serwyn being like, "Oh, it's so romantic.
Yes.
We're across,
We're different
different castes or
yes,
whatever."
yeah, like star-crossed lovers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Veronica's like, "Enough. I'm not going to discuss this before the companion." Basically, I am sure they will reach some solution. Companion Serilla observed. "I must be going. I have so much." And then Keffria asks her, "What will you do?" Because Serilla now has no job. She has no income. She has no power.
And I mean, although women do have more say
more
and sway,
opportunity
yes,
in Bingtown.
in Bingtown, it's still not a lot, and she has nothing going
Especially
for her.
not for an old trader. Like if
An
you're
older
not
woman.
an old trader.
Yes, also that. And her really her only skill is that she's a scholar. And while that's important and it has given her some favor, we find out, it's not really a job at the
Right.
moment,
Yeah.
especially for an unwed woman on her own. So it's kind of like a weird spot for her to be in. And Keffria is rightfully worried about her of what happens next to you.
So Serilla says that I will say what Keffria has been too kind to speak aloud, that Cosgo has exiled me here, which not true. She could go
back.
She could go anywhere not Jamaillia, probably. Yeah. But anyway, she wants to remain in Bingtown anyways. Basically saying that Cosgo maintains that Serilla was false to the vows and perhaps involved with the conspiracy. "I know, Cosgo. Someone must take the blame. I am the scapegoat. He must have one, and all others have negotiated forgiveness." "But you were never truly a part of it," Keffria exclaimed, horrified. "In politics, appearance matters far more than truth. The satrap's authority was challenged and his life threatened. There is substantial evidence that I challenged his authority for my own ends." An odd smile passed over her face. "In truth, I defied him. He cannot make me regret it. That is hard for him to stomach. This is his revenge." Which she is a bit downplaying her involvement.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, to be fair, nobody really knows everything that went down. And
not a ton, but just she is a little bit.
She's like, she is kind of involved. And she was for a little bit on a bad side of things. So obviously she's come a far way.
She has squirmed her way out of that too.
Yes. Well, she's a scholar.
And she's
smart.
She took active roles in the reunification of the new Bingtown as well.
Yes. Which is where her scholarliness, I guess, comes into play, because she did know Bingtown and the Bingtown history and old charters better than the people in Bingtown did, which was a huge win for them when they were negotiating other things. So it has helped with her reputation in Bingtown.
Right. All right. So this next passage here, I really, really like, because it reminds me of the chapters with Ronica living in Serilla's house.
Yeah.
So first we have Serilla saying, "I stay on in Bingtown as a penniless exile." Ronica smiles and says, "All the best Bingtown families began just that way. You're an educated woman. Bingtown is on the mend. If you cannot make your own way in such a situation, then you deserve to be penniless." So first off, straight up tough love Ronica being like,
pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Exactly. That's so Ronica. And then Serilla's like, "Well, Restart's niece is turning me out of his house. Oh, you should have moved out of there long ago. You never had the right to live there in the first place." With an effort, she turned aside from that old battle. It no longer mattered. "Have you found a place to live?" It matters, because she's being homeless.
Yeah, it's like,
but she shouldn't have lived there anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
and Ronica's kind of alone in liking Devad Restart.
Yes.
Well, Althea felt sad for his death.
Death. I don't think it's about Devad in that moment. It is technically the next of kin who gets his property, and like that's not fair to not let her get what she's owed, which is very much the traitor way.
Yeah.
But also, like, where does Serilla go now? And it's very like, "Oh, you're complaining too much. You'll be fine." And Serilla's like, I don't think I will be.
This next part, we learn that Serilla has learned a bit about political maneuvering. And after Ronica asks, "Have you found a place to live?" Keffria remarks that it was like springing a trap. I came to you. I could help you in many ways. On what terms? Ronica demands. Serilla's stiffness fell away from her, and Keffria felt she saw the real woman for the first time. The light of challenge shone in her eyes. And she suggests that, well, since you can't deal with Jamaillia, I can. That's what I grew up doing, basically. I know all of Bingtown, and I'm used to dealing with the satrap.
And I can do it honestly and profitably.
Yes. Keffria crossed her arms. Had she been maneuvered? I'm listening, she says quietly. So Serilla says, like, delegate it. Pass it to me. I did all of this before. I can do it again. Her eyes...
Yeah, let me do it in your name.
Yeah. And her eyes traveled from Keffria to Ronica and back again. Was she trying to decide where the true power resided? And at the money he has offered, you can well afford to hire me to do so. Somehow, I doubt that such an arrangement would please the satrap. And as Bingtown traders, that has been a prime concern for you? Pleasing the satrap? Keffria does reply that, like, maintaining cordial relationships is probably very important, especially at these times.
Exactly, yeah.
Which, yeah, that is true. However, Keffria's thoughts are flying, and she does believe that Serilla probably can do an excellent job.
Right. And she is thinking, if I turn down the satrap for this, who gets it? What happens? Does it go to another old trader family, or is it somebody in Jamaillia? And then what? And so it's really a good thing because she knows she has the best interest of Bingtown in heart to keep it with her. And
knows Serilla personally.
Yes.
Or at least Ronica does.
Yes. And they've seemed to grow a little bit close.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just want to, before we get into that, talk about how ultimately Serilla gets a happy ending too, because this was what she wanted all along.
Yeah.
This is literally the job she was hoping to get and maneuver herself into by getting the satrap to sign his rights away to her in Bingtown. And she still gets it.
Just on the other side.
Yeah.
She's not working for Jamaillia, she's working for Bingtown.
Exactly. Which
honestly,
is
even better.
Yeah, I was going to say is best case scenario for her. So while it is kind of tricksy, it is also, a big win for her. And I think, something she kind of deserves. She has worked for. I think there is growth there, and she has learned a lot more real world experience.
Right.
And honestly, the previous real world experience she had makes her really well suited for the role. Yeah,
for sure.
And Keffria agrees because she ends up saying, you know what, you're right. We'll try it.
However, Serilla's character growth and her past traumas and her relationship with Cosgo does come up in this conversation as well.
Right.
Because Serilla asks out loud, even before Keffria agrees to it, must he know? Basically asking, must he know that I'm the one doing it? So we have a potential bad relationship. And then an edge of desperation had crept into her voice, and she suddenly stood straighter and answers herself and says, no, that was a cowardly question. I will not hide from him. He has dismissed me as his companion, abandoned me just as he did all the other women who loyally served his father as companions. It is not a shameful distinction. That he has done so speaks of what he is, not what I am. She took a deep breath and waited.
Yeah. And I think that is really big of her. I think that is, I like to see it. I like to see that she is not just perfectly okay and things are better and nothing happened. She is still struggling, and there is still that doubt and fear of the satrap, but she's recognizing it for what it is and able to let herself know, you know what, never mind. It says more about him than it does me, and I am capable, and I know that.
Right, on the path to healing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty big. And then we have Ronica musing that 10 satrapies promised is not 10 satrapies in the hand.
That's Keffria.
Oh,
actually.
sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
She's being the good head of household because Ronica says it's not my decision.
Yes, which is also very big.
Yeah.
To let Keffria decide.
But it's very smart of Keffria to say, like, well, we've had, agreements with the satrap before that have not gone the way that was promised. So I will trust the satrap as little as ever. Yet with or without his funds, I think the Bingtown Council can benefit from Serilla's continued advice regarding Jamaillia. Basically, if the satrap doesn't honor the offer and he is not sending money because he's displeased with my advisor, that will say to me he does not fully acknowledge Bingtown's right to regulate its own affairs, and I will tell him so. Then I will advise to the Bingtown Council to hire Serilla to advise us specifically on dealing with Jamaillia. Selden's room is empty. You are welcome to it. However, you have to have a high tolerance for fish.
Yes. There are 2 rules. You have to have a high tolerance for fish and a disregard for furniture. So it's very nice of her to not only agree to Serilla taking over this sort of power, but to allow her to live with them. I mean, I really think it shows the growth of their relationship as people and just like their friendship growing. Unfortunately, I think that's also sort of a negative to me as a reader because all of their friendship happens off screen.
Yes.
Like clearly they are friends and close enough for her to trust Serilla enough to take over this role and offer her a place to stay in her home.
Right.
Although I guess they lived with Eki for a little bit. But I don't know, it just feels like obviously something has happened off stage to make them closer, and we don't really get to be privy to that, and I'm sad for it.
Yeah. It is showing kind of her smarts as a head of a household again, though. Keep the appointee of your representative close.
Yeah.
You can keep an eye on them. But also not immediately saying like, yeah, you're hired. We'll give you the full stipend or anything. Just saying
Right.
like, we don't trust the satrap. We'll hire you to advise stuff, but we don't know
That we
what the
actually have
satrap-
money. Yeah.
we don't know how he's going to react to this.
Mhm.
So we'll use it as a litmus test to see if the satrap really does believe in our independence
Yes.
and our right to choose any representative and advisor
Yeah.
to deal with you.
And I think it's really big and telling also for Keffria's character growth that not once in her point of view do we have her sort of worried about what her mother's going to think of her decision, or worried that she's spoken too hastily, or she doesn't actually know what she's saying. She doesn't know what's come over her. She is making decisions and she is confident in them. And I think that's, again, really big for her.
Yeah, this chapter is a good one if you are reading it all like in a row, and it tells you a lot of things about the characters and their growth. However, this chapter, like this week by week thing, it's just such a short chapter. We're done with it already, guys.
Yeah, it's done.
I don't really have much to say else about it because we've kind of talked about it throughout the whole thing there.
Yeah.
We get a nice little peek in at Bingtown.
And how they're doing and how the Vestrits are doing, I think more so is the purpose as well. Like they're still fine. They're back on their feet. They've pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, as
Right.
Ronica would probably say.
Yeah.
But there's also that sort of look towards the future of what can happen. And there's still things that could go wrong. Obviously, like Keffria says, the satrap could hate the fact that they've chosen the person that he is condemned to be their representative for them. But at the moment, things are looking pretty bright for the Vestrits.
Right. Yeah. Next chapter is Brashen and Althea and the final kind of reconciliation and Paragon's involvement.
Yeah.
And then the epilogue, I think, is talking about Shriver.
Yeah.
And the serpents.
I just want to say, sort of off topic, but relating to next chapter, I thought that there was more lore about who Paragon was and sort of what happened to him than what we actually get. And so I'm wondering if we get a little bit more next chapter, or if I just fully made up some of the things I thought I knew about Paragon.
Like what?
I don't know. I thought we got more details about his past and who owned him and how they treated him. And I don't feel like we really got that.
We've picked it up across a lot of these books here, and we've kind of pieced it together. And I've said the history a couple times because we got some of it.
Yeah, definitely. We did. I just thought there were more details.
Explicit.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like some of the details that I remember, I don't remember us reading yet. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll see next week.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you have any thoughts, please let us know at isfitshappy@gmail.com, or you can message us directly or comment on any of our posts on social media. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Reddit, all under the name Is Fitz Happy. You can go to our website, isfitshappy.com, or you can go to isfitshappy.podbean.com. And if you'd like to support us, support.isfitshappy.com. Thanks so much, everybody.
Look forward to hearing their thoughts. Okay, now we're coming to the best section. I don't know if it's the best, but that was a bold claim. But the section where we get to talk about what you guys have brought to our attention. And we're going to start it off with a light one, which is a response to a meme I made and put in our honorable meme shin, which was of the DW meme where she says, "This sign can't stop me, I can't read." And that being Tantaglia's response to Wintrow's well thought out plan of what to do.
Yeah.
And we got a response from listener Audrey asking, "Well, now I wonder, can dragons read?" And
interesting question. What do you think?
It is a great question. I think they cannot read because they would not care about the scribblings of little puny humans.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too. If a human was reading at the time and they were connected to like an elderling was reading, I think they could, if they wanted to, understand.
Big if they wanted to.
If they wanted to, yes.
But also, do I think they would have a hard time figuring out what writing meant? No, because they could probably just ask an elderling, and I feel like they're smart enough to learn.
Oh, definitely smart enough to learn. And also, if one of their elderlings was honored enough to have their memories absorbed by this particular dragon, that dragon might be able to recall those memories
if they wanted to
read. So, however, I think that is big ifs there. They would not want to, they would not care.
Yeah. No. So that's my thoughts on the matter, but I thought it was a really funny question and a fun way to start.
Let us know what you guys think. Can dragons read?
Can dragons read? And then we also got another Instagram DM from listener Gil. And this one is kind of not about the series we're currently on, but it is about Black Rolf.
Yeah, Assassin's Quest, episode 69 specifically, chapter 6. We're talking about Black Rolf's age.
Yeah, because we were thinking he was 20 something to 30 when Fitz sees him the first time in the market. He thinks, quote, "The drunk looked to be a tough man gone paunchy in the way that some thickly set men do as they age. So I surmise by this that he's middle-aged man by this." And then also what hinted at his age for Gil is that it said that he became a man and went on a quest and then found Hilda 7 years ago. So that also points to him being middle-aged.
Yeah.
But I would say that points to him being closer to 40 than middle-aged.
Well, 40, I mean, can be middle-aged, especially in the Six Duchies.
Okay, yeah, touche.
But like, if you became a man and went on the quest in the Six Duchies, isn't that 16?
When did
that was his
Fitz go through the
it was like
name
15 or 16, I thought. So like, if you become a man then, 7 years after that, maybe you're mid-20s. I think this is the debate that we had.
Yes,
I don't know. If you become a man and you're like 20, or like this is the man in the Old Blood where it's a different custom than the Six Duchies is used to, and you're a little bit older, you're more mature, you're ready to strike out on your own. Maybe you're 20, 22. Then that's, I think, why we were reaching towards 30.
Yeah.
But his description definitely makes me think of somebody like who's 40, middle-aged. But I think just his timeline that he gives, I still am sitting right around 30, because Fitz right there is like, what, 19 or 20 in Assassin's Quest?
Surely younger than that.
He ends, I think, at 20.
So
or maybe 19.
I feel like when he meets Black Rolf, he's
like 19 or something.
17 even.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I don't know. It's been too long.
He's 17 in Royal Assassin when he is Red Ship Raider warring, I think.
Okay.
I think he ends Royal Assassin. This? I think he ends Royal Assassin at 17. and then Assassin's Quest is after.
So maybe he's 18. But either way, I've worked with 18-year-olds recently, and spoiler alert, I am 27, and they thought I was ancient. So so it is not out of the realm of possibility for Black Rolf to be my age and baby Fitz to say, oh my gosh, that old man, he's so staunchy. And
he's gone paunchy around the middle. He's like a bear.
He's getting soft with his age, his decrepit age of 28. So still canon.
Yeah, I mean, like, Gil, totally agree with you. The description sounds like a middle-aged man.
Yes.
For sure. Based on the age that's described in there, like when he set out on his quest and stuff, I'm sticking with 30.
Mm-hmm. So
sometimes your joints just feel ancient when you're 30, you know?
So thanks for writing in about that, Gil.
Yeah, thank you.
And then we also got quite a few emails that we're going to go through, which is exciting. And we're going to start with an email from listener Lou, who is sort of new to our podcast. So thank you, Lou, for writing in. We love to hear it. And Lou,
sort of new. They've been listening for 9 months now. They're almost caught up.
They're almost caught up. They're a new first-time write-in, long-time listener. I think that's how they say it. But Lou read the books in a crazy order, which I thought was worth a mention because I always find the way people read these books so interesting. But according to Lou, the order they read it in was first they read Liveship Traders, then they read the Farseer trilogy, then the Tawny Man trilogy, then Rainwild Chronicles, then Fitz and the Fool.
See, I don't think that's that crazy, right? That's just the Liveship out of place.
That's true. But I feel like it would be pretty wild to not just do all 3 Fitz together after you've done 2 Fitz trilogies back to back.
Yeah, that's true. You just kind of like
you've already messed up. You might as well.
That's fair.
But apparently all of this came about from a love of Pirates of the Caribbean and finding a pirate book on the shelves at their local library.
Yeah,
so,
specifically Ship of Destiny.
Yes.
And then finding book 1.
Yeah, the romance cover copy specifically caught the eye, which is so funny because I love those covers. I think those are one of my favorites. Also, speaking of covers of books, Lou sent in a picture of their copy of Madship because we had been talking about a while ago, talked about how we read and treat our books very differently.
Yeah, I'm very careful with my books.
Yes.
I used to dog yearbooks to mark my page. Mostly library books, sorry to my high school library, but I do not do that anymore.
Yeah, and I read a book.
Yeah, you just open it up.
I flatten it out. Basically, I don't know how Lou got into our house and storage to find my copy of Madship, but it basically looks like the exact same copy looks. Madship
spine broken in multiple places, so there's lines down that.
There's rips in the cover. Yep. That is basically
it's all bent. It looks like it was bent around on itself, so you could hold it with one hand.
Yes, yeah. Really funnily as well, Luke got me a couple of books from Wheel of Time because I'm reading those as
the first 3 books. A set,
and it's in one of those nice little square sets, and he has read them before I got to them, reread them before I got to them, and they fit okay. They're still, you fluff up after you've read a book, but they mostly fit.
They uncompress,
Yeah. And then I read the first book, and it is so much bigger than what it started out as because of how rough I am with my books that it does not fit in the little nice box anymore with all 3 of them. So that's just a little peek into how I treat my books. And it's out of love.
It is out of love. Plus these books you write in as well.
Yes,
so you have to.
Fitz books are way worse. Or the Realm of the Elderling books are way worse than any other books I treat. But that is because I'm writing in them and taking notes and, writing on the bus and ripping them. And, well, I don't rip them on purpose, but.
Yes. Lou also writes in to talk about how Malta was, when they first read these books, when they were young, Malta was their favorite character.
But they were also the same age as Malta when they read the books.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when they read them again when they got older, saw how annoying and bratty Malta was. So I thought that was really cool to know that
they've reread the books multiple times and each time at a different age, and it just like changes how you view things.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to read different people's experiences with these books, and they are all slightly different, but it kind of resonates the same for each person. So it's really cool to read your experiences reading through these books and what you feel and how you feel about, Fitz and his character and these different characters and the live ships and things like that.
And honestly, I think it speaks to as well how different read-throughs can be. I think a lot of times we get people writing in about how maybe they haven't done a ton of read-throughs and they're doing it with us, and that's made them look at things differently, or the way we read it while we're talking about it made them see something differently. And I think it's so interesting how it's the same book they read a million times or one time or have seen, and it's just your mindset going in, the world around you going in. It completely changes what you take out of it. And as a recent convert to rereading, because prior to this podcast, I was not really a rereader for almost any book series. I think it does really speak to the fact that when you have a good book series, it is really interesting to take something new every time.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really cool to hear from Lou, especially because we don't really get a lot of Malta fans writing in. Mostly people pretty categorically dislike Malta, but there's a stan out there. I'm sure there are more. They're just not as brave. So thank you, Lou, for taking one for your team.
Yeah, thanks very much for writing in.
And thanks for writing in. We love hearing from you guys.
So this next part of this section, we're going to discuss emails that were sent in talking about our last episode with Brashen and Althea.
Right. So all of these are the ones that are sort of about Brashen and the chapter with Brashen's misunderstanding.
Yes.
So I think that is last chapter.
Yep. Oh, maybe 2 chapters now. 244. This is 246. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Starting with email from listener David.
Yeah, so David is talking about how, well, first of all, says happy birthday to the podcast, 5 years. So thank you very much, David. Appreciate that. And is talking about how he totally understands your frustration, Emma, with Brashen at this point, because it feels like these misunderstandings have been going on for 17 chapters. It's dragging on and on and on. And most importantly, Brashen's sulkiness in these chapters. Yeah, he may be miffed about his own interpretation of things, but it is never, never okay to react like that when your partner says they don't want to. So yeah, he is totally on your side about that. It's just like, no, and that's the end of the discussion.
Yeah,
you don't need to react beyond that.
Yeah, you don't need to take it out on your partner.
Yeah, so David is completely on your side about this misunderstanding and is equally frustrated with Brashen at this point and finds this trope very tiring and is just kind of like, it's easily solvable. Let's move past it, talk about it. Yeah. It's fine.
And that's the frustrating thing, right? Is that it would all be solved if they just talked to each other. And it feels like they should talk to each other. I mean, I guess they haven't always.
Right.
But, I don't know. It is frustrating. So thank you.
Yeah. We got another email from Joseph. And this is Joseph's first time commenting as well. Still trying to catch up on the backlog. But is kind of reading the listening to the more recent ones as well. So also wanted to comment about Brashen.
And this is more pro Brashen, which is absolutely fine. And talking about how it's easy to put yourself in Brashen's shoes instead of thinking about Althea, which is, obviously its own thing.
Right.
To think about Brashen and what he's going through and what he's thinking. And in his mind, he truly believes Althea wants to leave.
Right. So Joseph is really on the side that Brashen really makes one incorrect leap of logic here, that Althea is leaving. So with that in mind, Brashen does make most of the correct steps logically that follows from that assumption, which is incorrect. So Joseph is more on my side of this situation and really feels for Brashen in this because Brashen really kind of doesn't necessarily, in Joseph's mind, says or is angry that he's stopping or that Althea is denying him sex. It's more that Althea keeps taking from him when she is leaving and he has no say in it.
Right.
It's just like Brashen starts to do something. She says no, he stops. She says go to bed, he goes to bed. She takes off his shirt and kisses him. Then she says stop, he stops. And then they go to bed. And yes, he's angry, but like she keeps taking from him when he thinks incorrectly, again, that she is going to leave. Right. So in his mind, it's just like, oh, you can get things from me, but I can't get any comfort from you.
And I think a really important one to bring up is that it all starts with, again, the whole misunderstanding, but from his point of view, she's leaving tomorrow and she comes straight into his room and assumes that she has ownership of his bed and gets down and is like, I'm using your bed to sleep because Amber's in my room. To be fair, I will argue.
Well, Brashen also moved his stuff her stuff into his room.
Yes.
So.
Yes. That, and where else was she supposed to go?
Right.
I don't feel like that
I don't think that's a big part of it.
But
personally,
I think it comes back to this conversation that we had earlier with some other listener emails. It's really interesting to see how personal your life, not just where you're at in life when you're currently reading it, but just your own story plays a part in how you read, right? Like the way I am reading this chapter is different because of what my lived experience is and the way that Luke reads it. And even in this case, Joseph reads it completely different because they're coming from a different perspective. They're coming from different things that have happened to them that color the way that they're reading it. And I think that's so interesting that we can all have that experience. Mm-hmm. And I really do enjoy the differences that we all have because, I mean, ultimately, I do like Brashen as a character. I think I have said this more than once that that's why this disappoints me. I want him to do better because I like him and I like him doing better. Like, he should be better. I don't know. And
again, I don't think he needs to be better because I think while he was very sulky about it, mm-hmm. and they should not have this misunderstanding to begin with because we've expressed our disappointment that this had to be included in the book because it's a dumb disagreement. Whatever. Anyways, Joseph says that he also really loves that Brashen knows Althea is hiding something and that she doesn't want to share that just yet. So he has enough empathy to kind of realize those things. And between this chapter and later chapters, he gives her all the time in the world to share them when she is ready. I can't imagine it going well if he confronted her about what's bothering her. He really seems to approach Althea with the mindset of putting her needs ahead of his feelings. He's hurt, but he doesn't push it. And yet, I will add to that, he does sulk a lot.
He does, yeah.
And he grumbles, which I mean, in the moment, you're really hurt if that's your assumption about things.
But I feel, and again, I think it comes back to, lived experiences and stuff and just what we take into the books. But I definitely think that I've experienced, talking with a loved one when I say no to any boundary, just any sort of no. It doesn't even have to be in the spicy sense, as you said. And then they make such a big deal about it that then you're like, okay, well, I don't want to do this. And now I feel worse that I've said no.
Right.
Than if we just had done it and then I'm feeling bad and said nothing. And so I think that's what I'm reading off of Althea, the whole guilt of clearly making the person that you do care about upset, but really not having the capacity to do whatever it is they want. And that's the sort of, mm-hmm. that sort of thing is what I'm frustrated by and probably what I'm unfairly frustrated for Brashen with. But yeah, I don't love the whole sulkiness. Obviously everybody's allowed to have feelings and you can feel upset about being told no, but I think it's not, you shouldn't make it the other person's problem that they told you no.
Yeah.
And that's where, but I think we all understand that. And
so we've talked about Brashen in this, and then Anna has sent in an email about Althea's part in this and her response to her assault and our discussion around that and this misunderstanding.
Right. And so before we talk about it, I just do want to caution that this is about the assault. And so if you do not want to hear about it, definitely, this can be the end of the podcast for you. We'll see you next week. But this is just a little, this one's a little bit tougher of subject matter to listen to. So yes, take care of yourselves. That being said, Anna has written in to talk about how the misunderstanding from Althea's point of view is important, and that she appreciates it because she thinks it is a really good thing to show that when assault happens, it doesn't just happen in that moment. It continues to have ripples and is continuously something that person has to deal with. And that seeing Althea struggle in this moment and it create a misunderstanding that she can't just talk about.
Creating a wedge between them, between the two.
Yes, and something that she has to continuously deal with, and something where we see the trauma of her forcing herself before she's ready to open up to Brash, or to sleep with Brashen, just to take more control, is very reminiscent of some people's stories and the trauma that can happen and how people react to that trauma. And just everything that's happening is really important because it is real, and it is uncomfortable to read, and it is uncomfortable to talk about, but that doesn't make it unimportant. And I think that is a really good point, and I don't think I disagree with that at all. And I'm appreciative of Anna bringing that up, because it is something that is important to be said, that just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's unnecessary. However, I still feel like in general, I don't love seeing it in my books. So I will continue having that opinion, which is fine. And Anna didn't say it's not okay to have. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I think it is important to note that there are benefits. It is not necessarily all negative that we are seeing this struggle.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of our complaining for that episode was not necessarily how it is affecting Althea, but that the initial misunderstanding happens at all, because we're just so sick of that miscommunication. And yeah, like Anna says, it is important to show different aspects rather than just intimacy with Brashen and Althea, because this is a misunderstanding between Brashen thinking that she's leaving because she's hiding something,
right,
rather than just them having a wedge between them while they're trying to be intimate. So there is like other aspects of it shown in here, and that is important for Althea's process and the results of her rape and her assault. However, Emma and I are complaining about it because it is so annoying to read Brashen and Althea have another miscommunication plot line.
Yeah, like enough has happened to them.
That doesn't wrap up Althea's plot line as well. And I know like that is kind of callous to say wrap up in this sense, but we're nearing the end of the book, and literally the last chapter is when Althea's hurt is magically taken away, and then we have the epilogue. So like I am very frustrated. I'm not going to speak for Emma on this part, but I'm very frustrated in Robin Hobb that it's structured this way. That chapter between the two did not need to happen. That misunderstanding did not need to drag on for the whole chapter. It could have been a couple pages of like, oh no, pushing away, like, no, we'll have time tomorrow. And then Brashen being like, what? Be like, yeah, I'm staying. Like, oh, great. And then they fall asleep. Yeah. And then there's like fights in the morning and stuff. And then more in like, I don't want it to be, oh, happily ever after in Brashen's mind at the end of that chapter, and then it be reopened in the last chapter of the book. I find that personally very frustrating structure-wise. Yeah. It might make sense realistically, but as you've mentioned before, this is a fantasy book, and it's not wrapped up realistically at all. I think we can all agree with that. Yeah. Althea's plotline is not wrapped up in a healthy way. And I don't think that needed to happen that way. I think there's just better ways for this to play out. And it's just really frustrating to read that knowing how it ends.
Yeah, I think that does add to the frustration. But I think, I do appreciate Anna's sentiment of...
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's extremely important to, if you're going to include it in your works of fiction, it's not just there and it happens and it's done. Yes. There are long-lasting ramifications and trauma that a lot of parties carry, not just the initial person, but that it affects all of their relationships too.
Yeah, which is, really sad.
Yeah.
And tough. And yeah, I don't know. I think I like, though, the sentiment of just because it's uncomfortable to read and talk about doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Right.
And I think that is something that is probably a knee-jerk reaction, of like, I don't want to talk about this. And so
that's fair.
It's bad. But I also think there is some other things that are coming from our disappointments in this. But thank you, Anna. And to wrap this up nicely, Anna did send in a picture of their dog, and their dog's name is Sloppy Josie.
Which is a super cute name.
Yes, love it so much.
Big fan of that.
And for any European listeners that don't know what a Sloppy Joe is, please Google that. It's delicious. It's just a meat sandwich. I don't know, a wet meat sandwich.
That sounds so. Try to describe
really
a Sloppy Joe, or as in the Midwest, we call it barbecue sandwich, I guess, or a barbecue.
I'm Midwest and I do not call it barbecue.
Upper Midwest. You're fake Midwest. You're South Midwest.
Oh my gosh. We're not getting into this argument on the pod.
But yeah, Sloppy Joe, trying to describe it is so weird. But yeah, Google it. It is basically ground beef in a tomatoey, barbecue-y-ish sauce.
Yeah, and on bread.
Yeah, on a bun, a hamburger bun.
I really don't think there's like, sometimes you can get onions in it, depending on if you're doing like a fancy.
It usually has chopped up, bell peppers and onions and chunks of tomato.
Like a school lunch.
Yeah.
Like schools serve it sometimes. I don't know. I just say this because I know it's normal for us. And I feel like I've talked to Australians about American food sometimes, and they were like, what is that? And it felt normal to me. So just in case there are people out there who don't know what a Sloppy Joe is, Sloppy Josie is, first of all, a wonderful name for your dog. And second of all, a wonderful sandwich to eat. So
true. So thank you so much for everyone who has sent in emails. We love discussing these things with you because it really opens up our minds, because we just talk about it with each other, really. Yeah. So talking about it with more people is always a lot more fun.
Yeah. And I think it is good to have conversations that are tough, especially and about things that make us frustrated in the books or in writing.
Yeah.
Especially even if we disagree with other listeners, because again, we're just two random people from the internet. We're not professionals in this field. We don't do this sort of like, we're not mental health professionals by any means, and we're definitely not book professionals. We're not writers, I guess. So I think it's really nice to get to talk with other people, whether they're professionals or not, about how reading these books make us feel and what we get out of them, and sort of all of our journeys along the way. And it's so fun to get to hear the differences of what we all take out of it. So thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you next week.